we asked Joel to come and speak at this event, and genuinely, I was a little bit gobsmacked when he said he would, so which is great. But Joel is, he founded B2B Marketing back in 2004, when, if we're all honest, there wasn't really sort of a B2B marketing industry worthy of the name. He's become an advocate and ambassador for B2B marketing ever since. He regularly speaks, hosts and guests, moderates, and he's widely known in the industry, or he's a widely known voice in the industry, I should say. Although Joel is starting to step down a little bit from some of the role in which he has traditionally with B2B Marketing and Propolis, what he is doing is getting out there as an influencer, and he's working on his own projects, which I believe includes a book of some description that will probably come along the lines at some point, Joel, to be fair. But just to give you my own personal introduction of Joel, so I started getting involved in B2B marketing back in about 2007, 2008, and genuinely found it a real good source of influence for me. I've been to lots of their events, and then about 3 or 4 years ago, we actually started presenting at some of those events. But I followed Joel, and I found him a complete inspiration in the B2B marketing world. So we're really pleased that he's here today, and he can share some of that knowledge and hopefully inspire some of you in the room. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you just welcome Joel.
That's a super flattering introduction, okay. Andy. Thank you so much. It's really flattered to be invited and lovely to be here. So, what a lovely day to be in London on the Strand, all this lovely weather, and I'm personally still recovering, kind of tangentially from my wife doing the marathon, where it was hot weather, and I actually walked 19 kilometres that day as well. So it was a very big day for me and her as well. So. How long have I got, by the way? It's 11 o'clock, is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. So, Andy, always appreciate our partnership with Hut3, and Andy asked me to come and talk about, which is what my kind of pet topic at the moment, which is about trust in B2B marketing, which I think is the most compelling and challenging issue we're facing B2B as marketers right now, and explain why that is, and most importantly, what you have to do to earn it. Again, Andy's done a great job of introducing me, but it's the pink button you said, didn't you? There we go. There's only one button that's pink, and I managed to get the wrong one. That's quite impressive. So this is me. As Andy gave a really good introduction there, but as he suggested, I was founded B2B Marketing magazine in 2004. It's now moved into b2bmarketing.net, and Propolis, which is our community. I know there's some members of Propolis here, and lovely to see you, and I hope you're having a positive experience with that community. So my job has been increasingly to be, the business is brilliant because it kind of runs itself now. I don't have to do all that stuff anymore. I used to edit the magazine, produce the events, introduce the events, generally worry about everything. Now I don't get to do that. I've got a time off for good behaviour after 21 years, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to get to be a journalist again, explore issues, explore themes, and create my own content. And part of that is a book which I'm working on, which is on thought leadership, and also a podcast aligned with that on trust and influence in B2B marketing. I do lots of content activities besides. I'm exploring this whole new world of what it's like to be an influencer. A bit more on that later on. So let's start from the beginning. Trust, let's be honest about this, trust has always been table stakes in B2B marketing, right? It's something you've always had to understand and deal with, and it has to be, it's foundational to selling in a B2B world. However, before I go into that, this is a great quote from Stephen Covey, who's author of The Speed of Trust. Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communications. It's the foundational principle that holds all relationships. I expect we'll all agree with that, right? You can't do anything if you've got trust, particularly when you're selling to somebody. You've got to believe in what it is that you're doing. So trust is foundational in B2B marketing. However, from my perspective, it's never been more challenged or more difficult, and I'm going to explain to you in the next segment why that is. The most compelling thing really is this report from Edelman. I don't know if you've seen this or heard of it. It's called the Trust Barometer. And they've been doing it for 25 years, right? And I'm not going to promote other agencies, but kudos, right, to them for finding a topic 25 years ago and sticking with it all that time. And they launch it at Davos, right? So you can see they've got a bit of a, they're hitting for the big guns there, right? They're going for the top tier of decision makers in that. And they've tracked it all the way through. And it's free to download, of course, and you can look at all but you can have my slides as well, you're welcome to these. You can track all the ways that this has changed and evolved over the years. And what they've got to in 2025 is what they're calling trust and the crisis of grievance. and I think we probably have all got an inkling of what this is already without me having to explain it, the general sense of disenfranchisement from certain portions of society. And this is an international study. It's across all socioeconomic groups, and there's a sense of people being disenfranchised, left behind. There's a polarisation of power in certain groups and certain organisations, and it's becoming quite a problem across society. It's not great news, to be quite honest with you. It's not great news. It's something we need to be aware of. And then the other thing is worth saying about this is what they looked at. They looked at trust in governments, trust in NGOs, trust in the media, and trust in business. And of course, all of those things are relevant to us, but the trust in business bit is the really important bit for us. And actually, of those 4 groups, the trust in business, they tracked decline across all of those categories. The trust in business actually was the least decline, the smallest decline, but you can still see that it has declined. And if you look, this is the trust in business across major economies around the world. Bounce, right down to the bottom. UK. Okay, it's not in the bottom. This is trust in business in the UK. It's not down in the realms of Germany and South Korea or Japan, but it's the 4th lowest. So we have a problem about trust in business in the UK. So there's this general sense of disenfranchisement which is bubbling up. And now I have to have a slide with this gentleman on it. Well, I use the word gentleman very loosely. I don't want to get into... I'm not qualified to talk about whether tariffs are a good idea or not. I am a bit qualified to talk about whether it is a good thing in society to be denigrating the role of the media and pushing around expressions like fake news and generally creating a coterie of media organisations that will only provide you praise, no criticism, and then to be generally kind of denigrating the role of expertise and just not really aligning with fact-based activities or proper evidence. And this quote sums it up from the author called Matthew D'Acona, who's wrote a book called Post-Truth, The New War on Trust, Truth and How to Fight Back. All that matters, this is not a quote from Trump, by the way, this is a quote from Matthew. All that matters is stories feel true, they resonate. The point is not to determine the truth by a process of rational evaluation, assessment and conclusion. You choose your own reality as if from a buffet. Right. And I suspect all of us have seen aspects of this in our lives. People can ignore evidence, and there's already somebody who's on social media platforms who's sounds very compelling and is able to make a great, compelling argument and doesn't have to be rooted in reality or truth, or let alone fact. So that's a broader kind of socioeconomic context. It's not great news. There are also some more kind of zooming back into B2B marketers. And by the way, there's a prize if you can spot the images created by ChatGPT on this presentation. We are all suffering from information overload, and this is nothing new. We've all had this for a long time now. We talked to Andy's some fantastic stats in his presentation there. So much more content being consumed. We're all consuming more content as part of the decision-making process. But the reality of that is decision makers are overwhelmed, and they have been for a while, and it's just getting worse, right? So business execs typically receive between 100 and 150 emails per day. I suspect many of you get more than that, right? Anybody get more than that? Yeah, okay. So, and they are exposed to between 4,000 and 10,000 ads per day. How are you expected to make a decision based on that? You're getting all this content served at you all the time. 73% of business execs say they're bombarded with more information than before, and 59% say the amount of information received makes it harder to make decisions. If you're overwhelmed with too much content, you don't know where to look. It's harder hard to know who to trust. It's more about attention. It's more about distraction. It's about trust, but trust plays into it as well. And we can relate this back to the B2B Marketing Awards, right? So McKinsey famously a while ago said, on average, the number of channels used by B2B marketing brands or campaigns has gone up from 5 to 10. Actually, we can see from the B2B Marketing Awards last year, it's actually at 12, right? 12, there's an average of 12 channels used in every B2B marketing campaign. And the average campaign uses 10 distinct pieces of content in all formats. That's a lot of content, a lot of channels going on there. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I'm saying it's kind of necessary, but I'm saying it creates fragmentation, confusion, overload, all those kind of things. And this is some stats from data from... Sorry, has everyone had enough data yet? Shall I just cut? This is from the Content Marketing Institute in the States. It's a little bit old, but it does demonstrate the increase. This is the number of channels they're using, and this is looking at the fact that it's going to increase again. So it's not slowing down anytime soon. People are producing more and more content. Right, and the other end of the spectrum, right, so there's more and more content out there, going on out there now, and this is quite a personal thing, because I often describe myself as a recovering print journalist, right, having been a magazine editor for 20 years, and I'm still adapting to life in the post-printed magazine age. The deadlines are a lot easier to deal with, I can tell you that for fact. But what you've seen, I don't know if you've noticed this in your world, but a lot of the historic media brands have gone through a lot of transformations, and some of them have ceased to exist altogether. I know, Beth, you'll know that implicitly. This is Lloyd's List, which is one of the first B2B publications. It's a fascinating story in itself. This developed out of the London coffee house scene in the 1700s, where you'd have people going to coffee houses betting on whether their ship was going to come home or not, because they bought this ship, they'd sent it off to Australia or South America or India, and they were going to bet on whether it's going to come home or not, and they were hedging against that. So, because if it came home, their ship would literally come in, they'd be rich. If their ship didn't come home, they'd be broken. So they'd be going to coffee houses, having these conversations with other shipbrokers and owners, and drinking this newfangled stuff called coffee, which was making their brains explode, and they were having these crazy ideas. And Lloyd's List is the publication that came out of that. And actually, I think it was a couple of years ago, it got sold and taken online. You've also seen that quite recently. EG, Estates Gazette, another iconic B2B brand, that got sold recently to a minor media organisation. Farmers Guardian. I actually wrote a blog about this recently. There's a whole load of these historic B2B publications which have changed hands. Some of them still exist. The publishers typically, UBM, Relax, and what's the other one? EMAP, or what was EMAP. They've all, UBM got rid of something like 300 B2B publications in the space of 10 years. Some of these organisations still exist, a lot of them don't. You've also been crowded out by other media brands. The kind of the resonance which these organisations, which these publications had in the market in the pre-digital age was much greater. It's now much less than it was, and it's just that the authority. I think the key point is I'm trying to get to is the authority that these organisations, these titles, conveyed and provide as an anchor point in the market is just not what it used to be. And I think that's very sad as a print journalist. I think it's a real shame. You might disagree with me, but I think we're seeing less of these organisations providing that clarity and that trust in the market, and that playing that role as the objective broker of information and cutting through some of the hype that you might get from nefarious actors or just commercial interests. So this stuff isn't new, right? This has been going on for a long time. It's continuing to go on. You can see EG got sold last year. It's still happening. There's still an evolution, still more content being produced out there. But what, as we all know, is new is AI. We've seen this kind of rapid adoption of AI in the last couple of years. This extraordinary revolution, unprecedented in the time that I've been involved in B2B marketing. And this is some data that came out recently from Trust Radius, and what it looked at was the impact on the buying process of AI. And you could see that in 2024, 68% said, "Oh, no impact, not having any impact at all, nothing." And that's shrunk to 45%. And then the top number, and there's still a kind of similar broadly figure, people saying, it's frustrating, I have to do more work to figure out who I can trust. At the top bit is like, this year, 2025, 40% of people say, hey, it's great, it's easy to find information that I need. But I think that's worrying, because the information that it serves up is not the same as other forms of search or other ways of researching the market. And it worries me what they're not seeing. It gives AI presents you with a shortcut to results, which is not trustworthy in the same way, and there's all kinds of reasons why it's a problem. So I think we're all getting used to this. People are relying on a shortcut. They're busy. They're leaping to the conclusion that you're getting from AI, and that's creating challenges. Are they finding the right answer to their questions? So, and I did a podcast, and I did try and connect with Daryl, although quite belatedly. Where's Daryl? So Daryl, I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to talk, but our timelines didn't coincide. I'm looking to picking your brains about AI in future. But what I did speak to was Steve Mudd, who is our Propolis expert on AI. I said to Steve, can you send me a picture of yourself demonstrating your impact, your role in AI? And he sent me this. So he isn't actually a cyborg, although I suspect that one day he will be. But he's a very funny bloke. He's a very nice guy as well, and he's very interesting around AI. I talked. There's a podcast that I've recorded with him, which is coming out next week, and we talked about different types of trust issues that AI is creating. And I would talk particularly about thought leadership, but it does apply across other things as well. We talked about thought farming, industrial scale production of superficial content designed for engagement rather than value, flooding platforms. Content overload, content proliferation creates overwhelming noise that dilutes platform value and drives audiences from traditional information sources. deepfakes and synthetic media, right? And I think we can see this in here. Digital avatars increasingly indistinguishable from real people, enabling impersonation and raising questions about authenticity. Coordinated misinformation. Malicious actors can create organised misinformation campaigns disguised as authentic content, making detection increasingly difficult. And back to the previous slide, AI superseding human judgment. AI can outperform humans in certain knowledge domains, creating a concerning dynamic where synthetic intelligence appears more credible than genuine human intelligence. So there's a lot. This is a kind of an assault on trust, really, across many different dynamics of how we make decisions as business people. And Steve's kind of conclusion is B2B marketing has to step up its game. I don't think it's the end of B2B marketing, but it's the beginning of disruption, of serious disruption, and marketers either have to get ahead or they will struggle. So big challenges, as you can see. We've gone from some kind of foundational things, some socioeconomic things, to some really, really pressing technology-related things. So I hope I've convinced you that trust is a problem right now. The question which obviously springs from that is, what do we do about it? And I'm pleased that Andy has helped tease some of these, some of what I'm going to say in some of his presentation earlier on. And for me, again, spot the AI-generated image. There are three pillars to trust, or three fundamental pillars which I think you can leverage to help build trust in B2B marketing. And the interesting thing about these words at the bottom here is none of them are massively new or revolutionary, but all of them are quite challenged in their adoption or utilization for different reasons, and I'll explain what those are. I'm going to talk about those one by one. Now, the first is thought leadership, which I think is the most powerful weapon in the battle for buyer trust. It's an incredibly powerful mechanism, as Andy was alluding to earlier on, and we saw from Beth's data again about how powerful that is. And I've done a lot of a deep dive on this, but I think there's the problem. There's a bit of a misconception with thought leadership in terms of there's lots of things which. There are two big challenges with thought leadership, in my opinion, and talking to some of the experts in this field over the last few months. There's one first challenge is you have the difference between content marketing and thought leadership. And a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate or necessarily seek to understand the difference between the two of them. And content marketing is much less depth, much less resonance, much less authority or evidence-based. It's generally lighter and much less compelling. It's easy to construct, easy to produce and put out there. So, but often the terms get used interchangeably, and that's understandable, but it's not necessarily very helpful because thought leadership is different. It's a different caliber of content and activities, and we should be striving for the best in this. That's the first problem. The second problem is you have the difference between thought leaders and thought leadership. And is anybody here in professional services, for example? No professional services marketers. That's amazing. What a homogeneous group you have here. In professional services, thought leadership is actually the one area of B2B marketing where professional services is ahead of tech, and it's because they obviously have individuals in their organisations who are visible and preeminent and subject matter experts and are able to create content. The danger of that approach is that what you often have there is you have random acts of content of thought leadership creation. So we have one random expert who maybe isn't always the most socially orientated person in the world. I'm just going to put it out as a possibility, who will go out and create their own random acts of content, and they don't tie together, and they're often about personal value, and they don't really understand how to write properly. Beth, you know what we're talking about, do you? And so you have kind of great content going out there, but it's not joined up or consistent or aligned to a strategic goal, let alone plugged into a broader demand funnel. So what I think is interesting is what I'm calling strategic thought leadership, which is it's a marketing discipline which provides brands with a singular and compelling narrative with which to engage customers, illuminate problems, unravel complexity, build affinity, and validate investment and commercial alignment. The critical thing is it goes all the way through the funnel. Often thought leadership starts as a brand exercise, but it shouldn't just be limited as a brand exercise. It has massive potential not only in the mid-funnel demand area, but also in the sales conversion area as well. And by the way, it also has massive resonance in ABM, which I haven't gone into here because there's only so much time I've got today. So what is it? It's a content activity, but it's not content marketing. It utilises individual thought leaders, or it should do, but it requires collective, consistent effort and assigned activities. And it's not advertising, and it isn't a substitute for advertising, but it can inform better advertising. So it should be part of a big, long campaign, which is consistent over time and involves data and thought leadership and different executions and following all the way through to the funnel. I've done various bits of content about this, various blogs about this, so please do check out my my LinkedIn feed or my personal website where you will see more stuff on this one. Now, if you want some evidence for this, LinkedIn are big into this. I'll talk a bit about that later on. And they've sponsored this report which is again by Edelman. And there's some great data in this one. I think the new one's coming out. They did just an annual study, and there's another one coming out quite soon. And they're saying 3 out of 4 decision makers say organisations' thought leadership content is more trustworthy for assessing its capabilities than other marketing material. You've got to hope so. And 7 out of 10 feel more positively about an organisation that consistently produces high quality thought leadership. So some great resonant data. If you needed convincing that this was important, it really is important. But there's another problem, which is that thought leadership clearly rocks. But looking at the entries to the B2B Marketing Awards, only 17% of the entries actually included some component of thought leadership. And that's actually a very generous number, because I think a lot of those entries, I was trying to provide make this statistic look as big as possible. A lot of those entries that say they were thought leadership were probably more content marketing, right? So it's still a minority sport. And the question is why? Well, it's expensive and it takes time to create. It needs robust data for uniqueness. There is this confusion about thought leadership versus thought leaders. People say, oh, I'm doing thought leadership. Yeah, I've got a guy who blogs regularly over there, or a person rather. And yeah, that is thought leadership, but it's kind of random acts of thought leadership. It doesn't deliver results overnight. That's always the problem with B2B marketing, isn't it, right? Oh, I want to do something. Yeah, show me the money. Oh, yeah, it's going to take 18 months. Oh, right. Well, why are you doing that then? And it requires focus and specialism, right? Not everybody can do it and can do it immediately and easily. So I think it's an amazingly compelling thing to do. And this is a very detailed slide, and I don't think I've got time to go this in much detail because I'm already running late. But these are some things which I think are what great thought leadership looks like. And a couple of things to highlight there. It absolutely it requires sales enablement within it, because you should be thinking about how it plays out in that sales conversation. It should be plugged into that. It is a multi-content ecosystem, diverse content formats, an ecosystem of activity anchored around kind of hard data, but using all these tools. Podcasting. Why are people not using podcasting? I don't understand it. Videos, infographics, event experience. Continuous evolution, an opportunity for it to continue to grow, and then a balanced set of objectives. It's not just about top of funnel. It should be about all the way through. So that's thought leadership. And so you have to have these slides later on, and I'm conscious I'm running slow, running a bit behind. The next one of my pillars is about advocacy. And what is advocacy? Well, it's this combination of activities of reviews and referrals, either active or passive, that exist in B2B marketing. They've existed forever, right? We've all done them, we've all seen them, we've all experienced them. These can include things like case studies. And you can see here that, according to Harvard Business Review, 84% of B2B transactions begin with a referral. We know this, right? We all know this is important. But the problem, and you can see, again, more data. You needed more data, didn't you? You can see that Trust Radius, again, looks at, this is a report that came out very recently, user reviews, 47% of people use user reviews. It's almost as important as your own experiences, and it's more important than some of the things that vendors will provide you. And you can see that Gartner says that 76% use at least 2 customer advocacy sources, right? So we all know this is important. The problem, according to Barbara Stewart, who is our Propolis expert in Propolis, who's our expert in CX in Propolis, is that she puts it beautifully. She says, advocacy should be the holy grail of B2B marketing when your customers are your endorsers. But instead of building towards it as a strategic outcome, we treat it like an afterthought, a tactical bolt-on. Advocacy isn't the cherry on the top. It should be baked into the strategy. It's piecemeal and reactive rather than strategic and orchestrated. We just don't leverage these. We don't have a consistent approach to these various mechanisms for advocacy in the way that we should do. And that's a massive opportunity that's missed. And it's inevitable given often how this is treated. It's run by different teams. It's run across different activities. It's not mature as an activity, but it's something we need to get a grasp on because it is the most powerful thing. In an era where trust is deficient, it's an incredibly powerful mechanism. And these are some thoughts about how you can get serious about it. Think beyond NPS, right? I think we probably all, anybody not do NPS here? Anyone doesn't do NPS? No? One person at the back there, or might be scratching your nose, I wasn't sure there. Just scratching his nose, there we are. Everyone does NPS, but we also know that the NPS is a game, isn't it, right? It becomes a bit of a game. We try and play it to get the best score we can. So NPS is not unuseful, but it's not necessarily very helpful. It's not definitely the only game we should be playing. Try to align and centralise activities under one function, or at least join them up. Ramp up case studies and testimonials within campaigns. Again, there's some data I didn't show here about the extent to which advocacy was used within the campaigns in the B2B Marketing Awards. It was remarkably low. Create customer groups to encourage referral. That's a great way of bringing your customers together to encourage that kind of dialogue. Use AI to cut case study backlogs. There's a fantastic case study from Bidwell's from a couple of years back where they used AI they had a massive problem getting case studies out the door, and they used AI to shortcut a load of those processes, and they had a tremendous improvement in productivity. And last of all, investigate trust tech to automate advocacy. I'll come on to that a bit later on. So the last of the 3 pillars I wanted to talk to you about, as I'm very much in the home straight here, is influencer marketing. And my question is this the breakthrough? Is this the breakthrough trend for B2B for 2025? I don't know about you, in 20 years of B2B marketing, I've lost count the number of times people have said, yeah, influencer marketing is going to cut through this year, it's going to be the next big thing, and then nothing happens. But I do actually, and I am, as my colleague Rachel will tell you, I am a complete cynic. But at the same time, I really think that this is the year, or this is a couple of years where it's hit a tipping point and it's starting to be meaningful. And it's something which we need to really start to consider and start to bake into our activities. So why is that? Well, this is a handy infographic produced by Ogilvy. Ogilvy are nobody's fools, and they're really getting behind influencer marketing and B2B. They appreciate this, something that is very powerful. And I think what struck me when I saw this is actually, I think this is brilliant, but kind of a bit of a cheat at the same time, because I feel like they've taken the word and they've just kind of completely exploded it out of everything. It's not how the influencer spectrum is a very, very broad spectrum there, and it includes people like the journalists, and it includes business leaders, and it includes employees. There's thought leaderships in there as well, and customers. So actually, it's a very, very broad activity. It's not just finding someone who's very good at creating YouTube videos and then getting them to do a video about your stuff, right? It's a very, very broad activity. And I'm kind of annoyed by it, but I do think it makes sense. This is the influencer sphere that we operate in. And Beth is nodding. I think that she's just being polite, possibly, or she agrees. So we have a new way of understanding influence. We shouldn't look at it in the framework of as we understand those people who promote makeup on YouTube. It's a very different world that we're living in. And if you think about it, we all utilise these people to help with our marketing anyway. It's always been happening already. So actually, influencer marketing is kind of already here. It has been for a while, but there's some moving parts around why it's becoming more popular. One of those things is because of the way that the traditional media organisations have been changing, and people like me as journalists are seeking to position ourselves more around influencers. There are other things going on as well. We've seen this new definition. It's been productised by LinkedIn. LinkedIn have recognised that they are a provider of influencer of influence, and they've created something called thought leadership ads, which is quite annoying because, like I say, it's not really thought leadership. It's about influence. They're not helping with my wish to clarify everything. I may be a bit anally retentive, but I would like to put everything in boxes and say this means this and this means this. So I'm having counselling for it. Please forgive me. So it's been productised by LinkedIn, and they're making a lot of money out of this. And it's a very powerful way as well, if you've not used it, to amplify your posts on LinkedIn. I mean, I did a post for TCS last week about the London Marathon sponsorship, and I interviewed the CMO. And they clearly went back and boosted it, and it's like astronomical number of views on there. Whether it's going to translate into anything meaningful, I don't know, but it's done very well for TCS. And then we've also, perhaps more importantly, again, you're seeing this emerging ecosystem of dedicated agencies and platforms. So people are really starting to get on board with this. You're seeing people defining themselves as providing influencer services. They're seeing technology popping up as well. So it's becoming a thing, right? In a way that it wasn't before. So it's something that's really real and tangible. There's a real opportunity. People expect it, and people know how to consume it. And in a world where your traditional routes of influence and traditional routes of authority are declining, it's a great way to access more activities. I haven't got time to go into this in more detail, but it's definitely something you should consider for the future. Again, we've looked at this in the B2B Marketing Awards. This was a hard thing to get AI to analyse, to understand all the terminology. But you can actually see we worked out that 37% of campaigns at the B2B Marketing Awards included some kind of influencer marketing activities. And you can see internal subject matter experts were only used by 7%. There should have been many more. Celebrities used more by journalists. I'm really offended by that. What's wrong with journalists, honestly? Employees used by less than 1%. There should be an opportunity there to use employees much greater than they clearly do. and pure social media influencers barely at all. So there's an influencer sphere growing in B2B marketing already. There's a cadence of usage. It's just not necessarily always called that for the reasons that you can see from earlier on. But it's definitely time to get on board with it. Yeah, customer advocates only used by 1%. I talked about technology a couple of times. This is Trust Tech, which I'm coining that phrase. You heard it here first. And this is a range of technologies, some of which have been around a long time. Like the likes of is G2 in there? G2's up there in the corner. Pastel, for example. LinkedIn, obviously. Octopost. But there's some very new stuff. B2B Stars only launched a couple of weeks ago. Trusted Technique hasn't launched at all. I just happen to know they're speaking this afternoon. There's a load of technology that are coming around to help you in the various aspects of seeking to drive trust in your B2B marketing, whether that's around thought leadership or advocacy or around influence, whatever those ones. So there's a way of, particularly in things like in areas, actually in all of those disciplines, there wasn't a great deal of technology deployed. So it's great to see there's ways of increasing what you're doing by using technology to do that. I'm not suggesting technology is always the solution, but it is, and you shouldn't jump straight to it, but there are ways, but it's demonstrative that there's more and more interest going on in this area. I'm mindful we're pretty much out of time, but I just wanted to be consciously accept the fact that these disciplines interrelate, right? They overlap with each other, partly because terminology is willfully sought to be confused, partly because of the nature of who they are and what they do. I don't want that to turn you off from what it is I'm talking about here today. I think all these activities are useful, are incredibly powerful, and you shouldn't let that diminish the message, which is that I really think marketers need to be embracing them. A couple of thoughts on trust, benchmarking and metrics is my second to last slide, I promise, Andy. Trust is not in itself a commercial outcome, at least not yet. But I do believe it's absolutely fundamental to success, and it's going to become more and more important going forward. In terms of advocacy metrics, we've talked about NPS, there are CSAT scores and reviews. These are things which we know about an awful lot, but there's things that you can use. Thought leadership metrics, I think it's fascinating that literally in the last 6 weeks I've heard about 3 different companies launching thought leadership benchmarks. So that suggests there's something going on. People are really aligning around this. They've noticed there's an opportunity to do this. I have question marks about the validity of each of those ones, but it's an interesting exercise. It demonstrates that people are trying to rationalise and formalise this discipline in a way that perhaps they haven't done before. And influencer metrics, this is things like engagement rate, referred traffic, and lead generation. I'm sure Beth will have a view on this as well. But I think the key thing about this is the only metric that really counts to a commercial B2B marketer, which I hope you all are, you're all thinking commercially about impacts and success, is how your campaign or that organisation defines success. And it's likely to relate to growth in however you define that. So these things should be ultimately feeding in. Any metrics you can see on that individual tactic is purely secondary to how they can make you achieve your overall objective. And they can depend on what you're trying to do. So just some concluding thoughts. I mean, trust has always been table stakes, but we're in a period where it's never been harder to earn or keep, and it's never been more compromised. There are a number of these excellent techniques available for B2B marketing, but they're all still minority sports for different reasons, and they're all open to exploitation and usage, and we need to focus on them to deploy them properly. Trust is a means to an end, but ultimately the end is commercial success. We know that. We can't get distracted by that. I'm not suggesting that you do. We have to focus on being commercial and achieving our objectives, but this is a critical way of achieving that. So in terms of actively prioritising these activities, what I'd suggest is consolidate your advocacy programs, invest in thought leadership that's based on robust data, get all the voices aligned on a consistent message, and build out big ideas that are full funnel campaigns. It's really important with thought leadership. That's the biggest strategic activity. There have to be full funnel and a big, long idea that's not just a here today and gone tomorrow. It's not just one great bit of content, I'm going to move on to something else now. And integrate influence into your marketing campaigns, which you're already doing, but do it in a more consistent way. So that's my pitch on influencer marketing. I'd love you to subscribe to my podcast and hear more about this as I'm exploring this. I am intending to write a book, although I'm very busy doing things like speaking events and doing podcasts, so it gets quite difficult to do that. And please, if you're not connecting with me already on LinkedIn, I'd love you to do that. I've really enjoyed speaking here today, and I hope it's been useful to you. So thank you very much.